Lando Norris adds fuel to the fire amidst the Red Bull battle. Gasly names his likely replacement, and FIA conducts Flexi-Wing test as Red Bull continues to complain. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Now let's get straight to the latest news in F1. The FIA is set to run with extra cameras on selected cars during practice for the Belgian Grand Prix in order to monitor the flexing of front wings. In a bid to better understand the level of flexing of front wings, the FIA is set to monitor several selected teams during practice for the Belgian Grand Prix. While all the current F1 teams have been found to be fully in compliance with the regulations regarding the level of flexibility of their front wings, the FIA is eager to have a closer look at what some of the teams are doing. To that end, several teams will run with extra cameras fitted to their cars during Friday's practice sessions in Belgium in order to capture video footage of what their front wings are doing under dynamic loading. At present, only selected teams will run with the extra cameras, with the reason for not running on every car understood to be due to a limited number of cameras being available for the data gathering exercise. A technical directive, TD034G, has been sent this week to all competitors from FIA single-seater director Nicolas Tambazis, with teams being notified of the change for the Belgian GP weekend, which states selected teams will be required to fit their cars with additional wireless recording cameras. The camera positioning has been outlined by Tambazis and will focus on the inboard-facing nominally vertical surfaces to track the translation and rotation of target dots. The dots will be colored in contrast to the bodywork of each car in order to monitor the rotation of the front wing through various speeds. Further dots will also be used on flap edges to check the flexibility of the end plate and nose sections. Given that Friday practice does not take part under Parc Fermé regulations, the FIA has also thought of the possibility of teams reverting to a previous spec and headed off that possibility. A requirement will be that the cameras are fitted for more than 50% of a team's timed laps per session, unless there are demonstrable force majeure circumstances that prevent it, such as damage or a technical issue preventing running. Technical directives are not part of the regulation rulebooks and are usually not made public. These are instructions or clarifications issued by the FIA in order to help tighten up gray areas in the rules and can lead to rules becoming set in stone for the following year's regulations. On this occasion, the use of a directive is merely to help the FIA better understand what is going on with the front wings, and, if the need for a change in how static load tests are conducted is identified, could allow for that process to start. Following Friday's data gathering, the selected teams will be permitted to remove the additional cameras and run with cameras in their usual positions. Up until now, the flexing of front wings had been monitored by static tests, but the topic of flexing wings reared its head earlier this season as several teams began inquiries with the FIA regarding what competitors had been up to. The teams set to run the additional cameras are yet to be confirmed by the governing body. Media has approached the FIA for confirmation of the selected teams and the criteria under which the teams are selected. Max Verstappen has admitted it will be difficult to call how the rest of the F1 2024 season will unfold if the latest Red Bull RB20 upgrade does not deliver as expected at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Having produced the most dominant season in the sport's history in F1 2023, winning 21 out of a possible 22 races as Verstappen eased to a third world championship, Red Bull started the F1 2024 campaign in similar fashion, winning 4 of the first 5 rounds. However, the RB20 has struggled over recent months, with Verstappen winning 3 of the last 7 races stretching back to the Miami Grand Prix in early May. With Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez scoring just 15 points across the last 6 races, McLaren are growing in confidence that they can overturn a 78-point deficit to challenge for the F1 2024 Constructors Championship. Red Bull are set to respond to the growing threat posed by the likes of McLaren and Mercedes by producing their biggest upgrade of the season to date at this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix. Speaking to reporters in Budapest on Thursday, Verstappen explained that the update should give a good boost to Red Bull after a tricky series of races. Yet he conceded that the team could be in for an uncomfortable second half of the season if the new parts do not deliver as hoped. Asked how close the competition will be to Red Bull in Hungary, Verstappen replied, "I think you should turn it around. How close can we be to the competition? I think in the last few races we have not been the quickest car, so I don't expect that to suddenly now be any different. Of course we are bringing upgrades, so hopefully that will give a good boost. At the moment, I just want to try and see how that will work this weekend." We brought stuff earlier in the season, but they were not particularly big, I would say. This one is a bit bigger than what we have brought already. So I think for everyone, this is an important weekend. Asked if Red Bull's upgrade could shape the next few months, he responded, "You could say that. I think so. If this is not giving us some good lap time, then I don't know how the rest of the season is going to evolve. But at the same time, I also don't know what's coming from the other teams, so we just focus on ourselves." Asked if he will be worried if the upgrade does not work, he added, "It's always not good if it doesn't work, because if you work on it, you of course expect it to deliver on track." McLaren's Lando Norris has said he understands Zak Brown's critical position on Red Bull, with the team CEO at odds with Christian Horner. Brown has been quite critical of Red Bull and team boss Christian Horner recently, with tensions threatening to overflow following the recent clash between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. The tensions between Brown and Horner stem back as far as 2021, when the McLaren CEO criticized Red Bull after being found guilty of a minor overspend breach of the newly introduced financial regulations, leading to a financial punishment and aero testing restriction handed down by the FIA. But, with McLaren stepping up into the ring to challenge Red Bull on track this year, tensions have escalated as Brown was one of the most prominent voices calling for Red Bull and the FIA to be transparent regarding the findings of Red Bull GmbH's internal investigation into Horner. The situation was exacerbated by Norris and Verstappen colliding in Austria, which led Norris and McLaren team boss Andrea Stella to lash out at Red Bull and Verstappen, although Norris's position had softened by the time of the British Grand Prix. At Silverstone, Brown accused Red Bull of racing without respect for the regulations, a position Horner had no interest in addressing when asked by media, as the Red Bull team boss said he wouldn't dignify it with an answer. Heading into the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend, Brown gave an interview to the UK's Independent, in which he also said Red Bull is afraid of Verstappen and spoke out on why he's so critical of Horner. "I only respond to things when I think they're not right. I speak up on issues," he said. "It just seems I have more issues with Christian more than others, because he says and does stuff I think is wrong." As for Norris, who backed off on his calls for an apology from Verstappen by the time F1 reached Silverstone, the British driver was asked whether he's starting to view Red Bull as an enemy, given the position his team CEO appears to have adopted. "No," he said. "We're competitors and competitors with every team, but you give and you take, and when other teams give it to you, you've got to give it back sometimes." McLaren's MCL38 has been in contention for regular victories in 2024, with Norris having secured his first win at the Miami Grand Prix. But, despite the apparent speed of the MCL38 not translating into multiple victories due to strategic errors and their rivals outfoxing them, Norris said he doesn't believe McLaren has had the outright fastest car outside of 1 or 2 weekends. "I think we've definitely been the most consistent team, but I don't think we've been the outright best team," he said. "Like maybe 1 or 2 races, I would put my money on saying we were probably potentially the best car. But from A to B through a whole weekend, I don't think we've had a dominant weekend. When you look at other teams, they have. When you look at Canada, Mercedes should have been 1-2 quite easily, and they messed it up, a lot more than we did at Silverstone. So I think these other situations where we've just not been the best car, but we've just been there every single time, we've been there, we've made opportunities, and we've not made mistakes. Reliability has been strong. There are so many other things to think about that people don't talk about. I'm very happy and proud of what the team are doing. So yes, I want to believe so, but I think we've seen for 2 races now that Mercedes could potentially look like one of the strongest teams. You're still going to have tracks where Red Bull is one of the strongest. But I don't think we've had that one where it's been, from A to B, McLaren is the strongest this weekend. So I think we definitely have a bit more work on just doing that a little bit. Even Silverstone, I came out 1 lap after Lewis, we degraded the tires within 5 laps and then went on to win the race. Whether or not we made the wrong decision at the time, we were nowhere near quick enough. Even if I came out ahead of Lewis, I still wouldn't have won the race because our tire degradation was too high. So, I think you still have to look at those other things. People just picked up the fact we didn't win, but even if we came out in the lead, we wouldn't have won anyway. So we have a lot more work to do on certain situations, certain tires that we need to work on. At certain high-speed tracks, I think now we've been drifting away a little bit from being the strongest, or one of the strongest. As a rumored 3 drivers vie for the Alpine seat, Pierre Gasly insists he doesn't care who his teammate is as long as he's a strong benchmark. Alpine announced back in May that Esteban Ocon would be leaving the team at the end of this season, the Frenchman expected to sign for Haas. But while all the initial talk about his replacement swung between Alpine reserve driver Jack Doohan and World Endurance Championship driver Mick Schumacher, Carlos Sainz's name was added into the mix as his much-talked-about Williams move didn't materialize. According to reports, that was because Alpine special advisor Flavio Briatore put a huge deal on the table, one that included an escape clause for 2026 should one of the big teams come calling. Sainz, though, is in no rush to decide his future, as he's not just considering what the teams offer for 2025, but also who could possibly steal a march in 2026 with the new cars and engines. But while he has been dubbed the cork in the bottleneck by Zhou Guanyu, there are still driver movements taking place, with Haas confirming Oliver Bearman in the lead-up to the British GP, and more recently announcing Kevin Magnussen's exit. The Dane will officially leave the team at the end of this season, with his Haas race seat expected to go to Gasly's soon-to-be former Alpine teammate Ocon. As for who will take the Frenchman's seat at Alpine, that is reportedly a tussle between Sainz, Doohan, and Schumacher, although the latter recently stated a return to the F1 grid is within his reach. Gasly isn't bothered about the name in the second seat, he just wants the best driver possible. "I mean, yeah, it's something you discuss," he told the media when asked what he knows about Alpine's potential candidates. "My side, I don't care. I just one of the fastest guys out there. Always want a strong benchmark. I've had strong teammates in the past, and Esteban is strong, and hopefully we can replace him with the strongest and fastest driver out there. Honestly, I'm not ready to focus on that," he added. "I'm prepared and willing to deliver my best to the team regardless of who is next to me. I think the team has some good options, and as I said, I want the fastest guy." While Alpine team boss Bruno Famin has stated he has a plan for the second driver, he's been tight-lipped on that. However, F1 hopeful Schumacher has been anything but. Driving a 2-year-old Alpine F1 car during an outing alongside fellow hopeful Doohan, Schumacher told AFP he believes he has a good shot at securing a Formula One return. The former Haas driver said, "My chances in Formula One seem to be pretty good so far. At the moment, Formula One is within reach. I have to make sure that I don't become too confident, that I keep going and make sure that there is a plan B in case it doesn't work out. My plan was always Formula One. Now we have to wait and see what opportunities present themselves to me. I will wait for Formula One as long as necessary." Oscar Piastri says McLaren are confident of beating Red Bull to the F1 2024 Constructors title, with Sergio Perez currently struggling to support teammate Max Verstappen. Despite signing a new 2-year contract as recently as last month, Perez has found his Red Bull seat come under growing scrutiny over recent weeks, having scored just 15 points across the last 6 races. Media understands that a clause contained in Perez's revised deal will allow Red Bull to drop the Mexican driver during the summer break if he is 100 points adrift of Verstappen. Perez currently trails his teammate by 137 points ahead of this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix, the penultimate race before the August shutdown. Perez's lack of contribution has given McLaren hope that they could still win the F1 2024 Constructors Championship, with the Woking-based team currently in third place on 295 points, 7 behind Ferrari and 78 adrift of Red Bull. Appearing in Thursday's press conference in Budapest, Piastri revealed that McLaren are hopeful of overhauling both Ferrari and Red Bull before the end of the season, and he believes Perez's struggles could be decisive, with only Max scoring consistent points for Red Bull at the moment. He told reporters, "I think we're confident in our whole team, drivers, car, everyone around us. I think we've got a lot of confidence. We've scored the most points of any team in the last 6 races, and we're making up ground on everyone around us." Obviously, the gap to Ferrari now in the Constructors' Championship is very small. We're reducing it to Red Bull. Of course, at the moment, it's really only Max scoring most of the points there, so we can't for granted that it's always going to be like that, and we need to still be maximizing what we can do to score the most amount of points for both cars. But we're definitely confident that we're in the fight. I think it'd be incredibly pessimistic to not be optimistic of our chances later in the year. We know it's not going to be an easy task, of course, and things can turn around very quickly, but we're making the right moves at the moment and making good progress, so we're definitely in the fight. Piastri's comments come after Chief Executive Zak Brown claimed that Perez's poor performances are opening the window for McLaren to challenge for Constructors' title glory in F1 2024. Speaking to media at the recent British Grand Prix, he said, "I think it's going to be dependent upon Perez at the end of the day. Because you've just got to assume Max is going to be first, second, or third at every race. On the balance of the year, probably more first. Sergio underperforming is what's opening the window for us. I think if we have the same points gain we had the last 6 races, the balance of the year, we'd get the job done." Yuki Tsunoda says he feels ready to fight for F1's top positions with Red Bull and believes he deserves to be under consideration as Max Verstappen's teammate. The Japanese driver has been VCARB's star performer in F1 2024, but has not been seriously linked with a possible promotion to a Red Bull seat, as speculation swirls about a possible driver swap at the Milton Keynes-based squad. All eyes are on what Red Bull chooses to do with Sergio Perez's cockpit for the remainder of 2024, as the Mexican driver has struggled for pace and consistency in the second quarter of the championship. With McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari all fighting Red Bull with strong driver pairings, Max Verstappen has been left exposed to battling by himself, as Perez has been unable to get himself properly in the mix. He's scored just 15 points in the last 6 race weekends and has been outscored by all of Red Bull's rival drivers. With a contract clause understood to be in place that would allow Red Bull to pull the trigger on a driver swap if Perez is more than 100 points behind Verstappen after the Belgian Grand Prix, the leading contender initially appeared to be Daniel Ricciardo. The Australian previously raced with Red Bull between 2014 and 18 and wasn't cowed by Verstappen during their 2.5 seasons together. A dream scenario for Red Bull if Ricciardo can race at that level again. Ricciardo, despite recent improvements, has been largely upstaged by Tsunoda throughout 2024, and media understands the Japanese driver is not being seriously considered for a promotion, meaning it's the team's current reserve driver, Liam Lawson, who may be given the nod for the second half of the season if Red Bull does decide on a change. Speaking to the media ahead of the Hungarian Grand Prix, Tsunoda said he feels ready to mix it with F1's main players at the head of the field, including Verstappen. "If I'm not ready, I wouldn't have been able to fully announce the next season, at least for VCARB," he said when asked if he feels ready for a Red Bull seat. "I've been feeling ready for the last 3 years to fight against the top teams, higher positions, even with Max or whatever. But in the end, they're the ones who are going to decide, and it's not the things I can control. So I'm just focusing on what I have to do at the next 2 races. So I have to focus on a lot of things with our teams. And yes, let's see how it goes. Just the same as the previous races, just focusing on what I have to do for performance." Asked whether he feels he deserves the seat at Red Bull alongside Verstappen, Tsunoda was blunt. "Yes." With Red Bull appearing to test out whether or not Liam Lawson, who appeared as a super sub for the former AlphaTauri squad last year, before signing as reserve driver for the 2 Red Bull teams in 2024, might have the pace to jump straight into a Red Bull, Tsunoda may have to deal with being leapfrogged by the promising Kiwi driver. Lawson carried out a filming day at Silverstone following the British Grand Prix in order to gather promotional material for the team. The outing also allowed for some fast lappery towards the end in order to evaluate his speed. If Lawson is chosen to replace Perez, Tsunoda hinted he would find that decision difficult to understand. "If they choose Liam, that would be weird," he said. "But for me, at least, I don't think so. Liam did a really good job when he drove the previous year. I think I did more than that. We'll see how it goes. They know how to manage the drivers." But while Tsunoda may feel he deserves to be linked with the potentially vacant seat if Red Bull does decide to make changes and swap Perez out of his cockpit, he revealed there haven't been any serious conversations about the possibility. "Not like a clear one," he said. "General casual chat like this in hospitality, and it all happens like that. But also, they're not really rushing it. Checo was also announced 2 races or a race before. Checo might perform really well, and if the drivers perform well, they don't have reason to change the drivers, so I don't know. For sure, it's a good thing for Checo because they don't want to create any pressure working with him, and that's definitely fair and also for myself. In the end, they want me to focus on what I'm doing right now. We don't have serious conversations." Yuki Tsunoda not treating Hungarian and Belgian Grand Prix any differently. With the possibility of a change coming at the summer break, meaning the Hungarian and Belgian Grand Prix are particularly important to Perez and any drivers hoping to replace him, Tsunoda said he's not treating the weekends any different. "If the rumors are true, yes," he said when asked if the 2 races are extra important, given the context. "But to be honest, I don't know any exact situation around. To be honest, it's probably the same as you guys. Less information than you guys probably." In the end, every race is very important. Like myself, the contract is not really fixed for long years, and in the end, same things as usual, to be honest. In a sense, yes. He also denied feeling any extra pressure heading into the doubleheader, saying, "Let's see, so far I don't feel much additional pressure anything. Those things will probably naturally come with different situations. There are a lot worse pressures than probably now. Probably now it's good pressure rather than bad pressure. Last 3 years not knowing what you're going to do next year, that's worse. In the end, I'm very focused on the current Visa Cash app team and see how it goes." Thanks for watching the video. See you in the next one.